Hello and thank you for joining me for Music in My Life. Today's program is all about creativity, and we've got a creative type to actually help us in this program. His name is Geert Tap, and with me we are going to explore creativity in music and how music can be one of the greatest forms of expression in our lives. Are you a creative? Well, they say there are many characteristics that make people creative. One is that they like to daydream, as I was just doing. Second is that they are very observant, and I'm observing this glass. That sounds like that glass of water there. They can turn things around. That's a necessity for a creative. If something's going in one direction, a creative person can turn it in a completely different direction. Now, are you feeling low? Allow me to turn your mood around. Are you feeling better now? Yes, you are, I hope. They're not afraid to try out new things and create new experiences and even take risks. Now, I took a bit of a risk in playing that. Some of you would have understood that harmonic progression. To some of your ears, that might have sounded quite strange. But music has moved on because composers have dared to take the risk to try out new types of harmonies, rhythms, and ways of doing things. And over the years, that has become normal to our ears. One such piece was the Eroica Symphony, written by Beethoven. Beethoven's Third Symphony is considered very revolutionary because he dared to take these risks, putting himself as a composer and his internal struggles and turmoil on the printed page. And that, in turn, inspired many classical composers to write in completely different ways, where the music changed from functional music to, this is what I want to write, this is how I feel, and I'm going to dare to put that on the page. So my guest today hopefully will help you to maybe take a risk and unlock some of that creative potential inside of you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me here on Music in My Life.
It's a pleasure.
Well, now let's just sort of talk about drums, really, because, I mean, you play a lot in a group which does improvisation.
Yeah.
Now, how do you express yourself on a non-melodic instrument? I mean, for example, on the piano, I can express crying. That just sounds sad. But when something doesn't have a melodic reference, how do you express yourself on the drums?
It's a lot coming down to different rhythms that you use and also the different sounds that the instrument itself brings, because compared to a piano or a guitar or anything where you play the melody, with the drums you have the different parts of the instrument that gives different sounds. If you want to sound very dramatic, very sort of depressed or sad sound, you will use probably a lot of the darkest sounds.
Right, so it's the lower, deeper sounds.
Yeah, the lower ones. But if you really want to play it nice and light, then you probably use the nice and higher sound of a snare, for instance. And so you use the different parts of the instrument, combine them together with different rhythms. Because if you play, for instance, a very happy rhythm, you would play. And you will find a lot of people start to, when they hear this kind of rhythms, immediately sort of a smile comes on their face because it's just a happy feel.
Yeah.
But if you play something that is really more sort of carried, needs to be something very sort of emotional, then you would probably play something, you could still use the same kind of sticks or brushes, but you would play a different rhythm. And it's just because it's slower, it brings people in a slower mood, and it's all about the different rhythms that you use to bring different emotions out.
Great. Well, so let me set you a challenge.
Okay.
We're talking about spontaneous creativity here. Can you describe the journey you had coming here today to the studio? Can you describe what that was like just by playing drums?
Okay.
And I'm going to work out whether you had a clean run or whether there was traffic or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Well, at least it didn't speed up, so there's no danger of any tickets. So just describe what you were doing, because I mean, it went into a rhythm, and you started off just very light. So what was that describing in terms of
I was
your
just
journey here?
remembering myself, thinking back like when I was leaving home early today. It was just very nice and calm.
Okay.
Because I live in a small village, away from some of the motorways yet. But then it started raining this afternoon.
All right.
And then on the motorways, there was a lot more spray coming up. And so you would start to hear all the rain coming down on the car, but also the traffic was coming in. And so more and more of the traffic was building up sound, and eventually it became more stressful.
Yes.
That was more like the stressful part, but then you always come at the end of a journey where you can finally park your car somewhere, whether that's in the traffic jam or it is finally at the point where you want to arrive, and so you just come to a point where you can just stop, and the hassle and the stress of traffic is for a moment over. I mean, there's of course lots of different rhythm instruments, but one that I really love to use as well is just a very simple one. It's just a little shaker, egg shape, some beats inside, and you can just put all kind of different feels to it, different. And it reminds me when I visited Ethiopia a couple of years ago, and I saw some of these girls with the hand drums and some shakers, and then their voices. The sound they could make with just a few of these shakers and their voices was amazing. And it's just a very simple instrument with a little bit of rhythm in there, and it just works. And it's still a percussion instrument. It's not as loud, but it puts some kind of feel to it.
I mean, rhythm, it's so important and central to life, really, because we live by rhythm, really, don't we? We have a rhythm of life. Now, I just want to try something. I just want to ask you just to play some different rhythms on the drums.
Yeah. Just like your stereotype rhythm for rock.
Right. Now, can you change it to something else? That's really great. I mean, naturally, instinctively, I just found myself just naturally moving, but that's the kind of person I am. I move to anything. But, I mean, what is so important about rhythm? How does it connect to the human life, the human psyche?
I think, I can only speak for myself, of course, but I think for myself it has a lot to do, how do I feel at the moment? If I'm, for instance, stressed and I play the drums, I very quickly recognize in my way of playing that there is a stress factor there.
Right.
That I feel either I'm speeding it up, or I'm feeling like I can't play something calm. It is something that, so I think a lot of rhythm has to do with how you feel on the inside, and that comes out. There are moments where I just feel very calm. I wouldn't be able to play something very fast and very powerful. It's a very emotional thing. And that's how you connect. But of course, at the same time, that's when you play it on your own. But if you play it, for instance, in a setting with a band, you also interact to the other musicians. They bring their emotions in.
Right.
And I can hear, for instance, my pianist in the band playing something, and the way that he just starts playing, I feel like this would fit with this.
Let's try that right now.
Okay.
Let me play. It's just something completely made up, and then let's see us feeding off each other's
and let me change
emotion.
to different sticks for a change.
Because it's really quite interesting what you're saying, because of course, you said when you're feeling much more calm, you would play something slower. When you're feeling much more stressed, it might be. And then of course that's mirroring a heartbeat, isn't it?
It is.
A heartbeat, and so it's
Yeah. And I think in a way that what they say is that when you listen to certain types of music, it has an effect on the people that are listening. Their heartbeats either go up or go down. And I have the same when I go to a concert and I hear a band playing, and the different styles that they play, I can sense from my own heartbeat that it has that my body's responding to it. So it is like an interaction.
That's really interesting.
Okay.
Well, let's play something. Well, we'll split the royalties.
Okay, deal.
Great. But I want to talk a bit now about your drama side. So if you want to come in. You know, that was really, really interesting that, you know, we just sort of felt, I mean, even some of the rhythms that we did, we didn't know in advance that when we were going to do, we just instinctively did that at the, you know, at the same time.
You just feel it, don't you?
We just absolutely.
It evolves, the
Yeah.
music, it evolves. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, moving on to your drama side now, I mean, in music we often use drama to actually help people to understand music, to express it, especially singers. Now, so many people are self-conscious and they just don't express themselves. I mean, where does your creativity come from?
If you were to ask my teacher at primary school, the ones that would love to put me behind wallpaper, as we would say in the Netherlands, when you're really a nasty child or a busy child that teachers cannot deal with, they would like to put you behind the wallpaper so that you're calm and sort of covered. But they couldn't do that with me. I was just this kind of child at school that could never sit still, that would see anything that was moving around. So if I would see a bird outside the classroom, that would have my attention. I wouldn't listen to anything that the teacher was trying to teach, and if they would ask questions, most of the time my mind was somewhere else. And so I was always sort of, I guess, dreaming, always seeing things, smelling things, seeing things that were not really there. Imagination is, I guess, the word that comes to my mind. I would always imagine other things, and I still have that today, actually. I can still sit today in a coffee shop, and I see the people pass by, and I see faces, and when I see the faces, stories start to evolve by just watching their faces, and you sort of start to imagine what is going on in their lives. And that was with me from young onwards, and it never changed.
But it's quite interesting because I've worked a lot with the musician, the jazz musician, Wynton Marsalis.
Yeah.
And he's a similar person. He said he looks at people and says, what would Gert sound like in a piece of music?
Yeah.
Now, of course,
I wonder what it would sound like.
now, of course, I mean, you also teach and do seminars in creativity and drama.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you instruct that person who's just so clammed up and so into themselves and they just cannot let go? I mean, how would you? What sort of process would you?
Of course, it always takes a bit of time. You need to warm people up. So you start with something very simple little exercises, where you just ask a person I mean, you would put a stick, for instance, on the floor. Okay. And you just ask the person, now look at the stick. Now imagine that stick is anything but a stick. What else could it be? And most of the time you find people, for instance, doing it, all of a sudden it becomes like a weight. And they go to the stick and they walk to the floor, they pick up the stick and they start like weightlifting.
Okay.
Or they use it as a pen. This big stick and they start using it like a pen. Or like a cigarette or anything like that. And then you actually tell people like, amazing, isn't it? It's just a stick. But you use your imagination and it became something completely different. And when they start to realize that, that is the moment where you go the next step. And you start to explore just the creativity that's inside of them. Children, they have it naturally. Look at kids. I mean, they could look at this stool that I'm sitting on. And you put it somewhere in the room. It would be anything but a stool. It would become their home. They crawl under it and they're inside their home. They would turn it upside down and it would sit in it and becomes their boat. Children are so creative. And I've always wondered, what happened with the creativity when we grow up? Where did it go? And I see with lots of people, when they're depressed and sad, they've lost that creativity. And when you start playing with adults again and you start doing these play roles and they come over that threshold of embarrassment and like shame and fear, but they start doing it, you have to just tell them, like, sorry guys, time is up. Right. They want to keep on going. Once they start doing it again, they can't get enough of it because it's so much fun.
Well, I'm going to put you to a test now.
Okay.
Because I'm just going to play some things, and I want you now just to act something.
Yeah.
Do whatever the music tells you actually to do.
Yeah. I like that. Thank you.
Of course, we can do that the other way around. I mean, musicians always have to do that because they get, if you're writing film music or music TV, for example, of course you get images and you've got to make sense of that. And,
I always wondered how that worked.
Yes.
Who is first in that
well,
kind
I mean,
of thing?
it depends on how organised the producers are. But no, it's much easier to write some images than just to imagine it happening and writing just to thin air and time.
Yeah.
Great. Now, obviously, creativity is a necessity, really, isn't it, in a way? Because, I mean, if we weren't creative, then, you wouldn't be wearing nice, sort of fashionable clothes nowadays. We wouldn't be with a microphone. We'd be shouting to each other, using a cup or something like that. So, obviously, creativity has become a necessity for the survival of mankind. But what do you think creativity really comes from? What is the genesis, really, of creativity, the beginning of it?
Personally, I think it was put in by something bigger than myself. I give that the name God, but there is something beyond me as a person of flesh and blood that put it in there, that had an idea, and that creator was already creative in itself. So in that, it put something of itself in me. I sometimes compare it to Pinocchio and Giuseppe. Giuseppe there creates Pinocchio, and then Pinocchio becomes a living boy, but there's this relationship between the two. They can't be without one another. One is a real human being, the other one is a wooden doll on strings, and yet when it comes to life, it tries to live by itself, but it can't. Constantly has to go back to its maker. And to me, I call that God, and that maker has put in me this creativity, which even those people that don't believe in a God or don't experience a God, when I look at them, I can see the signature of that creator in them. Because, for instance, when we talk, it's not just the words and the sounds we make, but it's the whole body that speaks, that's creative in our language. And I see it all the time. I mean, I'm working in a big town called London. There's a few people walking around there. and when you see them react and you see all the different cultures, the way that they express themselves, and I look at that and I'm thinking like, wow, that was some creative mind that was beyond me, that could put something so specific in all these different kind of people. No one is the same, but yet they are communicating with one another. And that is, to me, the creator God that put it in there.
Right. I mean, there's a whole song collection written on people's life experiences and also how they connect, vertically. And it's called the Tehillim, or the Psalms, which the Jews actually use. And no doubt they would have spontaneously looked at their lives and said, okay, this is what my life is all about, and they would have penned it, quite openly. It talks about some quite open things. So I'm going to do something very different with you now.
Okay.
Okay, I'm feeling like a teacher. But if we would take one of those folk songs written in that song collection, and just, I'll play some chords, and then you just express what you think it's saying. So it's a different type of creativity, because before we've generated and originated the ideas ourselves. Now we're using somebody else's thought, but also using another aspect of our creativity to interpret that and make creative.
Okay. I mean, I could try to use some of the psalms, some of the words that I found there in those songs, and use that and then make it creative.
Okay.
Yeah?
All right.
Now, the Lord is my shepherd. He's my shepherd. That means He cares for me. So, I don't need to want so much. It's fine to have just a little bit. And He's so close to me that He leads me beside calm waters. Waters that refresh not just my body, but my soul. That even if I'm going through, these kind of dark times in life, I don't need to fear. Because He, that shepherd, He's with me all the days of my life. It says He even prepares for me a table with food and everything. It's all there. Even before the eyes of those who don't really like me. For I will be with him eternally, sitting at the welcome table. All the days of our lives. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. I wish we had another 2 hours to just even do a bit more playing. But it's been really wonderful and insightful, just getting a little window into what creativity is all about. And thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome, Ken. Thank you very much.
Today we focus on two things which are natural to all mankind. Rhythm, which is around us every day, and creativity. And believe it or not, you are creating. When you're improvising, when you're doing something necessarily you didn't intend to do, you've improvised, you've created. So discover that creativity inside of you. Who knows, there may be a powerful song waiting to be unleashed. And step to the rhythm. Live in the rhythm. For the rhythm of life is a powerful beat, puts a tingle in your fingers, a tingle in your feet. Rhythm on the inside, rhythm on the street. For the rhythm of life is a powerful beat. Do join me again next time for Music in My Life.